Welcome back to the channel. Anytime Bitcoin pulls back even by just a % or two, the first reaction you hear from certain corners of the internet is absolute panic. Suddenly, every self-proclaimed analyst, every clickbait headline, and every random voice on social media is screaming bear market, as if the entire industry has come crashing down overnight. It's honestly hilarious when you think about it, because if you've been around crypto for even a few months, let alone a few years, you'll notice that these mini pullbacks are just part of the natural rhythm of the market. But people love drama, and the term bear market gets attention. What's funnier is that these cries of doom have been happening consistently for the past couple of years, while Bitcoin has continued to recover, build momentum, and even go on to make new all-time highs. Yet the noise never goes away. It just changes its tone depending on the direction of the price. The cycle of fear and greed continues on and on, feeding the news cycle, while the actual fundamentals of crypto keep evolving in the background. Now, if we shift our focus to what's happening with Zebec Network ZBCN, things get really interesting. When you actually search for ZBCN on Google alongside crypto news, you don't see much mainstream coverage, and that in itself is a signal. Mainstream media usually only catches on to coins when the prices are soaring, when people are FOMOing in, and when retail attention has already peaked. That's when the articles come pouring out, not because journalists suddenly developed a deep passion for blockchain technology, but because traffic and clicks follow price pumps. Right now, because ZBCN's price action hasn't taken off in the same dramatic fashion as some other projects, you don't see much coverage. In fact, in one of the few articles that even bothered to mention ZBCN, the writers basically bundled it together with a handful of other cryptos, then threw in a cautious note that its price could resume a downtrend and possibly retest its June low around 35 cents. That's roughly 20% lower than the level it was trading at during the time of that article. And funny enough, that's almost exactly where the coin eventually ended up. Threw a bearish forecast out there and moved on. Meanwhile, the real story is happening on the ground within the community. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be taken as financial advice. Always do your own research before making investment decisions. Because if you stop listening to the headlines and instead take a closer look at the community chatter, especially over on X, formerly Twitter, while some outsiders dismiss ZBCN as another speculative altcoin, its core community hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, they show up every single day, posting updates, creating content, keeping the conversation alive, and making sure the project doesn't get buried under the noise of bigger names. And in crypto, community is everything. We all know this by now. Narrative drives attention, and attention drives liquidity. A great product with zero awareness doesn't move, but a project with a strong, vocal, consistent community, that's the secret ingredient that often sparks exponential growth. ZBCN's community has understood this better than most. They're not just sitting back and waiting. They're actively bulldozing their way through, keeping the spotlight on their project and refusing to let it be ignored. If you believe in something, you don't stay silent, you push it forward. That's the only way visibility spreads in crypto. And speaking of pushing forward, let's not overlook one of the most important developments tied to ZBCN, the partnership with AllUnity, a regulated e-money operator. This wasn't just some minor press release. This was a game changer that signaled real-world adoption. Salary payments in crypto moved a massive step closer thanks to this partnership. Imagine that. Payroll processed directly in stablecoins through the Zebec Network. We're talking about practical financial infrastructure that solves a real problem for employees, employers, and institutions. Getting paid in crypto used to be a wild dream, something you only heard from early adopters. But with Zebec, it's becoming part of the financial mainstream. That's why I keep saying I don't understand how anyone can sleep on ZBCN. This is adoption in action. It's the kind of milestone that tells you a project isn't just a speculative coin, it's building the rails for a new financial system. Yet ironically, a lot of investors still don't know about it. And that's exactly why the community has to work double time. Because here's the truth. If you're holding ZBCN or any other coin with potential, you need to work for your bags. I know that phrase gets thrown around, but it's the reality of crypto. A coin without a community voice is a coin destined to drift in obscurity. Too many times I hear people complain, "Oh, I don't want to shill. I don't want to seem like I'm just pumping my bags." If no one knows about a coin, the price will not move. Awareness is the lifeblood of adoption. So ignore the people who criticize, ignore the FUD, ignore the labels. Every successful project from Bitcoin to Ethereum to XRP had waves of community members who were unapologetically loud. That's how movements grow. And ZBCN needs that same energy. Work for your bags. Keep talking about it, because eventually consistency pays off. Earlier this year when ZBCN had its run, the ones who kept showing up reaped the rewards. Now let's get real about some numbers. At the beginning of the year, ZBCN saw some amazing gains, but then it pulled back with the rest of the market. And that's perfectly normal. Crypto is cyclical. But along the way, we also got major signals of validation. For example, the CEO of Uphold, which is not just some random exchange but one of the biggest holders of XRP, announced they had invested in 100 million ZBCN tokens. That's huge. That's not retail hype. That's institutional confidence. That's a statement saying, we see long-term value in this project. Of course, the FUD boys immediately tried to spin it, but at some point, you just have to ask, what are they going to say now? FUD exists for every project. Bitcoin has been declared dead hundreds of times. Ethereum was called a scam for years. XRP has been mocked relentlessly. Cardano went through endless criticism. And yet, all of those projects survived and thrived. ZBCN is no different. It's going through its rite of passage. The critics will fade when the price rises again, because that's always how the story goes. Everyone was mocking ZBCN, saying it was garbage, shorting it, betting against it. Then the price reversed. Shorts got squeezed, traders got liquidated, and suddenly the narrative changed. That's crypto in a nutshell. One day it's worthless, the next day it's unstoppable. The lesson is simple. Don't let temporary noise shake your conviction. If you believe in the fundamentals, the partnerships, and the technology, then short-term swings are just noise. Every major project went through this crucible of criticism before it became mainstream. Currently, it's trading around 36 cents with a market cap of roughly $339 million. Daily trading volume has dropped about 23%, sitting at $11 million. Yes, that's a slowdown, but it mirrors the broader market slump, not just ZBCN. What stands out more is the community sentiment. Nearly 89% remain bullish. That's remarkable resilience given the circumstances. To put this into perspective, let's compare it to XRP. XRP is down about 25% from its all-time highs, despite having a colossal $165 billion market cap. Meanwhile, ZBCN is down 46–47% from its highs. At first glance, that seems worse, but context is everything. For a small-cap coin, these drawdowns are normal. A 47% correction in a $300 million cap project is not catastrophic. In fact, it's less alarming than a 25% correction in a $165 billion project. Scale matters. Volatility is part of the deal with smaller caps. The key takeaway is that ZBCN's position isn't nearly as bad as it and compare across the board. What's more, when the Zebec team hinted at a big announcement, the price spiked 35% in just a couple of hours. That's how reactive and sensitive the market is to ZBCN news. Even in a bearish environment, the potential for explosive upside is sitting right there, waiting for the next catalyst. Of course, the risk remains that prices could revisit lows around 24 cents if bearish momentum continues. But that would only create fresh entry opportunities for new investors. That's the dual nature of crypto: risk for some, opportunity for others. The last one saw Bitcoin and altcoins going parabolic. This one is more structured, narrative-driven, and sector-specific. Real-world assets, payments, and utility-based coins are capturing attention. ZBCN sits right at the heart of the payments narrative. If you believe in blockchain-powered payments, and I do, then you must see ZBCN's potential. It's not going anywhere. It's just getting started. The rotation of narratives will continue. Projects with real utility always find their moment. At the end of the day, everything comes back to conviction. If you're only holding ZBCN because someone told you about it, you'll panic sell the moment things get rough. But if you actually understand Zebec's vision, the payroll system it's building, the institutional partnerships it's forming, and the long-term impact it could have on global payments, then you'll see past the short-term volatility. Conviction is the dividing line between people who make life-changing gains and those who chase pumps, panic sell, and end up empty-handed. That's why I remain bullish on ZBCN. Not because of blind optimism, but because the fundamentals, adoption signals, and partnerships all point to a project with staying power. The noise will fade, but the builders and the believers will win. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dive crypto updates and analysis.